The 90s witnessed a remarkable upsurge in the horror genre specifically tailored for children. This era, particularly in Canada, marked a golden age for kids' horror, with notable shows like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of the Dark, Tales from the Crypt Keeper, Freaky Stories, and books that match the same energy like Animorphs, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, and In a Dark, Dark Room. All of these shows and books captivated young audiences by skillfully presenting overwhelming concepts such as death and the supernatural in a non-threatening manner. While we can say that some of this genre still exists for kids nowadays, with shows like Stranger Things and Wednesday, although these two shows are very much inspired by the 80s and 90s, I wanted to better understand why the 90s was an exceptional period for horror in children's entertainment. Before we dive deep into the horror genre, if you like this kind of content, please subscribe to my channel. I post all kinds of videos that are about nostalgia, so like, comment, and let's get into it. The 90s was the perfect time for horror. The decade started out with movies like It, Silence of the Lambs, Casper, The Nightmare Before Christmas, and ended off with Hocus Pocus, The Sixth Sense, and The Blair Witch Project, amongst many other classics. The horror genre has a rich and captivating history, permeating various forms of entertainment and leaving an indelible mark on popular culture. From its early roots in literature to its evolution in film and other media, the horror genre has constantly evolved and influenced subsequent generations of creators. Horror as a genre can be traced back to ancient folklore and mythology, where tales of monsters, spirits, and the supernatural captured the human imagination. Notable literary works such as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and Bram Stoker's Dracula laid the foundation of horror storytelling in the 19th century. These novels explored themes of fear, the unknown, and the macabre, setting the stage for the horror genre's expansion into other forms of media. The advent of cinema brought horror to life in new and thrilling ways. In the early 20th century, filmmakers like Georges Méliès and F.W. Murnau experimented with visual effects and storytelling techniques to create eerie and unsettling atmospheres. However, it was with the release of Universal Studios' iconic monsters films such as Dracula in 1931 and Frankenstein in the same year that horror became a prominent genre in the film industry. These movies introduced memorable characters like Dracula and Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman, becoming cultural touchstones and paving the way for future horror films. There was a significant shift in the post-World War II era with the horror genre, with movies like Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho in 1960 and Roman Polanski's Rosemary's Baby in 1968. Psychological horror emerged as a prominent subgenre, exploring the depths of human fear and the psychological torment of the protagonists. These films relied on less supernatural elements and more on suspense, tension, and human psychology to captivate audiences. The 60s ended with the creation of the animated show for kids Scooby-Doo, which I'm sure most of us are aware of, is about a group of teenagers and their talking dog, who solve mysteries involving supposedly supernatural creatures through a series of antics and missteps. It's arguable that Scooby-Doo was the first of its kind, showcasing themes of suspense and the curiosity of solving mysteries for various scary situations. The show perfectly mixed in seriousness and goofiness with the balance of different characters in the show, making it easy to watch for kids. To some generations, Scooby-Doo was the gateway to the horror genre. Moving into the 90s, the horror genre was heavily influenced by its predecessors, drawing inspiration from both classic and contemporary works. The slasher subgenre, popularized in the 80s by franchises like Friday the 13th and A Nightmare on Elm Street, continued to have a significant impact in the 90s. Movies like Wes Craven's Scream in 1996 cleverly deconstructed and paid homage to the slasher genre, while revitalizing it with self-awareness and meta-commentary. Moreover, the 90s horror genre embraced a more psychological and supernatural approach, pushing the boundaries of fear and suspense. These movies explored themes of the supernatural, the unknown, and the psychological trauma, resonating with audiences by delving into deeper and more complex narratives. It's evident that the 90s loved the supernatural and the unknown, as we see with shows like Unsolved Mysteries and X-Files. When it comes to horror and the younger audiences, children have always been drawn to stories that elicit a mix of excitement and fear. The popularity of R.L. Stine's Goosebumps paved the way for the adaptation of these types of stories into TV shows, The existing fan base and recognizable brand made these shows highly anticipated and contributed to the overall spike in horror shows for kids. Networks and production companies, seeing the desire for this genre, sought to diversify their programming lineup, catering to different interests and tastes. It's hard not to mention Tim Burton, who was also a major influence as he directed notable movies like Batman and Beetlejuice in the 80s. His distinctive style and unique storytelling approach brought a fresh perspective to the genre, appealing to both children and adults. Burton challenged the conventional norms of children's entertainment by exploring the unconventional and the macabre themes. His films delved into topics like death, loneliness, and the social outcasts, addressing them in a way that was both relatable and thought-provoking for young viewers. This approach expanded the storytelling possibilities and offered a more nuanced and introspective narrative for children. Burton's celebration of uniqueness and individuality through his characters became iconic symbols of embracing one's differences and finding beauty in the unconventional. These strong messages of self-acceptance and embracing one's own quirks had and still has a profound impact on kids even today. Introducing the horror genre for kids was a way to provide fresh and unique content that stood out from the previous traditional children's programming. It was a natural evolution in the 90s to introduce kids to the genre, providing a unique opportunity for children to explore complex emotions and fears in safe and controlled environments. By introducing elements of horror in a non-threatening way, these shows can strike a delicate balance between entertainment and education. I think for many of us who grew up watching shows like Are You Afraid of the Dark, it helps develop some of our abilities to suspend disbelief and shape the interest of what they are today. One of the most influential shows of the 90s, which was Goosebumps, transformed Stein's spine-chilling tales into episodes filled with suspense, mystery, and the supernatural. The show appealed to children by presenting relatable characters caught in eerie situations, and blended humor, adventure, and fright through imaginative storytelling. Are You Afraid of the Dark had the same formula and successfully engaged kids while imparting valuable life lessons. While these shows had a spooky undertone, they rarely ventured into truly terrifying territories, and had narratives that reinforced positive messages, teaching young viewers the value of bravery, friendship, and problem solving. What made the horror genre in the 90s for kids stand out was its ability to tackle complex themes without overwhelming young audiences. By introducing harsher topics like death, the supernatural, and moral dilemmas, these shows help children navigate and understand these concepts within the context of fictional narratives. Most importantly, many of the shows were about kids and acted by kids. The settings felt relatable, as we can all remember times when we sat with our friends telling spooky tales to each other. In previous decades, kids' programming was more fantasy-like, with superheroes and characters that kids couldn't relate to as much. The 90s was the start of more shows that focused on regular kids themselves who were battling everyday problems. The impact of the horror genre in the 90s remains evident even today, as it continues to hold a special place in the hearts of those who grew up in the era. Now, I know not everyone who grew up watching these horror shows was a fan, but many of us loved it and shaped our present interests. In my opinion, it taught us that being afraid is okay, and that life can throw weird and scary things at you at an early age. The 90s in Canada peaked for its kids' horror genre and stands as a testament to the power of well-crafted storytelling and its ability to captivate, educate, and shape young minds. I hope you liked this video. What shows did you grow up watching, and what shaped you into the person you are today? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.